Friendo, Steve here, and welcome back to the Friendoville channel. It's time for another Picard podcast. We're reviewing episode 8, Broken Pieces. Today, we've got, I think, 2 episodes left in the season. There are 10, right?
10 episodes.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, we're coming down to it, and things, obviously, the action is picking up quite a bit. This was a pretty action-heavy episode, but that wasn't everything that happened. Tim, what did you think of the episode?
Man, this is definitely... We talked about how you have, like, the intro, or the building of the world, and then you have, like, the Riker trilogy of episodes, the 2 where he directed, and then when he's in there. This is the third act. This is where things are beginning to wrap up and tell the story it's been setting out to. And it does a good job. There's a lot of background stuff, a lot of stories that just happen to kind of coalesce. Like, we'll get into it, but yeah, this series, man, there's only one episode that kind of leaves me going, it could have been better, and that's episode 2. Other than that, everything's been killer.
Yeah, I thought that the most interesting thing here was the revelation of the Romulan backstory. I really like some of the ideas presented. I like the 8 Suns system that was sort of manufactured. I thought that was really cool. So yeah, I thought there were some pretty interesting revelations here, and there's sort of a mysterious, hundreds of thousands of centuries old, years old race that you know, we can speculate on. I have not looked at any of the Reddit threads. Have you? Did you do any research on this one?
I don't do Reddit. I'm not the Reddit. I'm not the tweet guy. I didn't search. I did my own memory alpha. I did my own research on 2 possible races of what it could be, and I'm only down to the 2. But so we come to find out, kind of, it's actually kicks off with this, right? With the ceremony for them to become Zhat Vash, right?
Yeah, so it kicks off... that is the wrong one. It kicks off with, we are 14 years ago, and we are on... this is the planet that is with the 8 suns.
Yep.
And
so it's like
it's
4 groups of 2 suns that are circling around each other. And then those circle around each other themselves.
It is called Aya, and it's known as the Grief World. It's an 8 sun system. It's 18 years prior. It's before the synth. I guess it would be before the synth. I mean, it was around the time of because the synth thing, the Mars attack was 14 years prior, right?
Yes. 13 or 14, yeah.
Okay, so this is like, I guess, right when they're sort of formulating that plan. So anyway, so what it is, it's a very rocky, very plain world that we're going to. And
very Star Trek empty world, and then there's something in the middle.
Yeah, right. And so there's basically the setup is this. There are, I'd say probably 10 or 15 Romulan women, all cloaked in these sort of, you know, monk-like cloaks. And one of them is Rizzo. The one who's leading this ceremony is who we know as Commodore O. And then also there is the lady that went crazy when Soji was trying to talk to her on the Borg cube. I forget her name, though.
She called her Auntie, and I don't know if that's a name or a title.
No, it's because she also mentioned... So I had to watch that part, too, because there's a lot of talking that happened there.
Yeah.
And so they're all standing around in a circle, and they are surrounding this sort of glowy... It looks like a circular, large coffee table, but with like a glowy frame around it.
So it's really, really weird. There's 1,000 ways you could describe it, but I'm going to get as Star Trek-y and nerdy as I can. The golden pool at the base looks like Odo's race of like almost liquidy, but it's just pure sheen. It's not rippling. And then it goes up, and like when you go to like an amusement park, they have those aluminum poles that are polished, but that's in a giant circle. So you have this golden ring, and then these poles that go up, and it's this railing basically, and that's the only way to describe it. And it's glowing. And they mention very specifically that the Zhat Vash they know it came from a precursor civilization. And what did they call? They called it admonition.
Yeah, so it's referred to as the admonition, which one definition of admonition is a warning.
Well, I thought they called is it the ritual that's admonition or the device called admonition? It didn't really get into the specifics.
So the actual thing, so from what I understood, this is sort of what I understood. The admonition is the thing. And the thing is a storage of memories from hundreds of thousands of years ago when there was a race that created this 8-sun system that developed technology too much, or developed artificial life too much to the point that it reached what they call a threshold, where another race showed up and like just completely destroyed or annihilated this culture. And this was set up as a warning for that. And the Romulans were able to tap into this. They show up. They like I think it was like hundreds of years prior to where we are now, or then, anyways, in Star Trek. Romulans showed up to this planet. They're like, wow, what is this? It's probably in their territory, I'd assume. They say, hey, what is this? They take a look at it. They're like, whoa, crazy stuff is going to happen if we get technologically to the point where we're creating these synth beings that could potentially be better than, normal beings. And they will kill us all, or this mysterious race that will show up and annihilate everybody. So that's sort of the setup there. And they said, if only certain people will not go crazy if you touch this and experience, these memories from the admonition. And sure enough, they all touch it. Rizzo is totally fine. The auntie is okay.
She's very shooken. She's sitting there holding on to it. They all hold on to it, and then it's almost like they can't let go because all these memories are fluttering at them. And you see like a synth, and you see exploding planets, and you see something that looks like the Red Angel from Discovery, kind of. And then the synth kind of morphs into Data a smidgen, and it's all really, really weird, and it's just flashing. And then when they let go, like you immediately see one gal pull out a blaster and just shoots herself in the head.
Another one tries to scratch her face off. One person bashes her head in with a rock.
Bash her head with a rock. Auntie is there pulling out clumps of hair. And then there's one person standing there going, what can we do to stop this? And that's Rizzo. So,
yeah. And so that's when Rizzo is taken under her wing.
Under O's wing. Yeah. So what race is it?
Okay, so I got on Reddit while we were talking.
Oh, and boo!
And
think,
man,
it's
the same thing. Just dropped a bunch of stickers. So there is some speculation that, and then I went to Memory Alpha. There is some speculation that it's the Takan, which appeared in a really cheesy episode of Next Generation.
I think it's Iconians.
You think it's Iconians, really?
Remember, Iconians have had the thing of downloading data, their previous history into people in the database and everything before. They're known for... They did that too. I
thought they just had those cool doors.
No, I thought they tried to download something in the Enterprise.
Really?
Anyway, I think so. Don't get me wrong. But the time period is definitely Iconians. Otherwise, depending on the time period, if it's even longer than that, then it could be the ancient humanoid race from the Chase.
Okay, so do you know who the Takans are?
Hold on.
Do you know who the Takans are?
Okay.
Do you know who the Takans are?
No.
Okay, there is an episode of Enterprise, or Next Generation, not Enterprise, of Next Generation. It's I think it's like a first season episode where they go. It's called The Last Outpost, and the Enterprise and I think the Ferengi go to this planet, which is all like lightning clouds and stuff, and
this is when the Ferengis have their whips, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
okay,
Riker
I remember the
down.
Ferengi. I don't remember what happened.
Riker and his crew, and then he's like, Picard doesn't beam down, but Riker does with like an away team. They meet this old melty looking guy who is like basically a lost remnant of the Taconian Empire. And he's like, they lived 600,000 years ago. He said they had trillions of people in their population, and they were highly advanced technologically. They had the ability to move entire stars using planets as outposts for defense. They employed guardians known as portals to defend these outposts and to act as gatekeepers for those seeking entry to the Empire. It was during the age of Makto when the central star of their home system destabilized and went supernova, ending the Empire. So that's what one Reddit thread says.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm sure there are others.
Yeah, I mean, because there are some really, really ancient, like I said, you have the Iconians, you have the ones, but I would almost hope it would be something else too, like you had the ancient humanoid civilization that, gave birth to humans, Klingons, Romulans, Vulcans.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from them, but they were alive, I had to look it up, about 4.5 billion years ago. So for this thing to be around, it would have had to have been a long time ago. So I don't think it would be them, but we don't know anything else about the fact that they had the chick, the gal who played, what's Odo's race called? I can't remember.
The Founders.
The Founders, yeah. The female founder played the ancient humanoid in that episode. This actress did.
Right.
But besides that, we don't really know much about him, and I think it'd be cool to find out some more about what this precursor race, like what really, really happened back then. But who knows?
There's tons. There's tons of threads here on Reddit. I have not dug into any of those.
So anyways, the rabbit hole, man, it's Trek fiction. There's a rabbit hole a mile long and then some.
Yeah, it's great. So anyways, after that, Rizzo, we fast forward back. We're on the Borg Cube. Rizzo's in the sick bay of the Borg Cube. And she's talking. I forget the lady's name. I probably should have researched it. Like, it would have taken 2 seconds. But she's the one who went crazy when Soji was talking to her, like, ages ago. And she was, like, a historian about Romulan mythology. And so Rizzo is talking to her, and we find out they have had a previous relationship. Rizzo mentions that when her parents died, this lady took her in. That's why she calls her auntie. And she discloses that there are ships about to embark on Soji's home planet, which they have discovered thanks to Narek. Romulan guards are coming for... Oh, okay, so then we're with Elnor, and we find out that a bunch of Romulan guards are on their way. He's able to fight them off to a degree, but there's too many of them. They sort of get him in handcuffs. And then 7 of 9 shows up because he had activated the Fenris Rangers thing. And she shows up and she blasts them all. It's going to be a crime if we don't get a freaking 7 of 9 show, man. She is so good. She is so badass, and she has such a screen presence.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a crime if we don't get
good.
more.
It is so good. Well, it's just like if we don't get a Pike series.
Yeah, exactly.
So she busts in and says, "Where's Hugh?" So I'm wondering if that was Hugh's.
Yeah, they mentioned so in the previously on, it sort of puts it together better than the episode did because Hugh was like, "Go to the Queen's room, contact them," and he does it. And as he's doing that, and I think you see Hugh slip it to him or something, which still didn't explain why he didn't have it on him, and it was just dangling in that previous episode.
So yeah, but it was, and then 7 busts in, and I thought she was going to be one and done, or 2 and done, but she came back. I'm very pleased she did too. Yeah,
me too. So she kills them all, and then she's like, "Are you okay?" And then he hugs her, and she's very motherly with that. She's like, "Okay, it's okay." And we've seen that, of course, with the brutal torture and murder of Icheb. Yeah. We saw that, so she has that in her, and it was just a really cool moment. Man, she is just. You can't take your eyes off her when she's on the screen, man. She's so good.
No, you can't, man. She's still her acting, like her aging. She's a little more grizzled, a little more aged, a little more mature, and that does everything for her character too. Because everybody's like, "Oh, they only brought her in to Voyager for eye candy," and I'm like, for this, man, I don't even care. Her character's amazing, even better now.
Yeah, she's really terrific. In fact, I'll be honest with you. This is like, I'm not going to say the first episode necessarily, but. You know how it takes a little bit of time for for any show, but specifically Star Trek, for you really to see the chemistry with the cast. And this, it is so there. It is, you're like, so, man, I want this to go on for 5 seasons because I want to see all these people sort of, and how they're going to figure it out. I want to see them all evolve together. I find it very...
It's taken Rizzo a couple episodes, like almost a full season, to finally kind of blind in her place. And even still, she's a little choppy here and there. But yeah, because we get to see more of the captain because he has all of his EMHs. Elnor is kind of a bland character. We've seen 7 and Picard in previous series. And it is intermingling. We get to see Picard and the captain later on this episode. And their relationships are really building. It's a solid cast.
7 and Elnor specifically in this episode. You sort of, I like that they sort of put Elnor off on his own, and then had him go to 7, because there is this, and they don't get a lot of scenes together, but the scenes they're in are very effective. You sort of get the sense that he's in one way, in the same position that she was with Janeway. And so you get this like new mentor-protege relationship where 7, we had already seen her as the protege and her Janeway as a mentor. So it's a pretty cool dynamic there.
And he is still in over his head. He doesn't know what's going on. He's a brilliant fighter. We can see that, but he still doesn't know the mechanics of what's going on. And then you have this grizzled 7 who, is just like, I know what's going. Well, she wasn't there for what's going on, but she's like, what's going on in this Borg cube? And then that's when we can only assume, after the big hug, he explains what's going on, where it's Picard, because he's like, hey, I relinquished myself from Picard. I stayed back so they could survive, and it's really good.
Picard brings Soji to the ship, and Rios immediately freezes when he sees her. And Picard's like, hey, what's the nearest starbase? We need a contact. I need a subspace channel, Starfleet Command. What's the nearest starbase? He goes into Starfleet mode, and he's like, it's Deep Space 12. And then he's like, okay, cool. Well, let's set a course there. And he's like, Rios, come on, snap out of it, set a course. And he's like, okay, but once we get there, you're on your own because I'm done. He skulks off, and it's like, what the hell was that? Then Raffi gets a stick up her ass, and she's like, hey, JL, we just found out you're bringing somebody new on this ship. We just found out that Jurati is a Tal Shiar, like, secret agent. And he's like, what are you talking about? Is that a theory of yours or is it factual? She's like, well, it's a theory, but she had a Viridium radioactive isotope in her bloodstream, and it was a tracking device. And she's like, and we also think she killed Maddox. And he's like, oh, God. And so he's like, no, but Soji's cool. Raffi tries to pull a gun on Soji.
Yeah, pulls a gun straight pointed. And then he's basically, Jean-Luc does the whole, and this is one of the things, because he's like, let me find you a cabin. He doesn't put his arm around her. He puts his arm kind of like close to her back, saying, please come with me.
He doesn't violate
She's still being
the
trusting.
space.
Well, he does a little bit, but he's still comfortable enough. I mean, if you meet me in real life, I will invade your personal safe. I apologize. But what it is that he goes, as soon as he's like, come follow me. And then she pulls a gun. He goes, nope, if you're going to shoot her, you got to shoot me. He jumps right in front. And I think that really puts her at ease. After everything that just happened with Riker and comes up and says this, he's like, he is for me first and foremost. And I think that it's a good character moment for Soji to see what Picard's all about.
Yeah, and it's also it's a nice little moment. Raffi had a really good episode too, and it's a very dramatic thing for her to do. And she immediately puts her gun down because she's like, okay, yeah, this is ridiculous. And so
she's like, really, JL, you're gonna do that to me? And then she just,
right, exactly. So anyways, and then she's like, I'm gonna go bug Rios because I like him better. They go to, I think they go, she's like, we think that she killed Maddox. And he's like, who's we? And so then it goes to sickbay. They're looking at Jurati, and it's the EMH. And he's like, yeah, no, she totally could have saved him. She interrupted the process. I had him on a strict blah, blah, blah for his heart.
Yeah.
And then she disrupted that and totally killed him. It was her.
Yeah. So that they didn't have facts, but all the evidence points to the fact that it happened that way.
Yeah, exactly. So then Picard is in his holodeck chateau, and he's on the phone, basically. It's like her sitting there with Admiral Clancy, our favorite cursing admiral. And he's like, hey, I need a squadron because this shit is going down. I've got all this evidence. I'm going to be at Deep Space Nine. And she's like, she gives him a little bit of static, but then he interrupts her. And he's like, no, you listen to me. This is all happening, and I need it, because if the Starfleet doesn't do it, then they're a bunch of dickheads. And she's like, shut the fuck up. She literally says, shut the fuck up. And it's like, okay, so she just curses a lot. That's just the F-bomb was dropped all over this episode. It's just, that's the new normal. 3 times. Yeah. That's the new normal, because it was her, Rios, and Jurati all dropped it in this episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now I just remember the third time. The funny thing is, so you know how sometimes you pick up on old person lingo, right? And you're like, how far into the future do they know this stuff? During this thing, when he's being passionate, he says, hey, these windmills turned out to be giants.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know what that's a reference to?
Yeah, it's a Don Quixote.
Don Quixote or Man of La Mancha. But that's the thing, is that when you further get down the line, we're a little bit older, though. I'm thinking younger kids, my little brother, would not have any idea, I doubt. And we didn't know Picard is the linguist and the reads old books and stuff like that. So I think it's funny he's using these terms, and it's just like, I'm going to read you the riot act. No one talks like that. So
yeah.
it was one of those things that just really made me chuckle. And there are certain things you can definitely tell when it's filmed and the age disparity, but it was something that just really made me laugh. So
it's funny you mentioned that, because like there's a lot of that in even so like Next Generation was like my thing when I was growing up, and like as a kid or as even like a teenager, there are things that I really had no idea, it just sounded cool like that. And then you get older, like when Picard, I think, was talking to, I want to say Guinan, about the oncoming Borg attack in Best of Both Worlds Part 1, and he talks about when the Romans saw the Visigoths coming over the horizon, did they know that it was done? And when I was a teenager, I didn't know anybody. I did not pay attention to history as much as I should have. And it wasn't until I was much older that I was like, oh, yeah, okay, the fall of the Roman Empire. And then it prompted me to do some research on that. So,
yep.
I don't know, that kind of stuff is really interesting. I like it.
Do your homework, friendos, because sometimes it takes you down rabbit holes and you learn about history, just like the Vulcan names, Romulus and Remus, and all kinds of stuff. It's going to take you into mythology, and it's all really, really good stuff. So
yeah. So Raffi's on the bridge. She starts doing some investigating into what's going on with Rios, because she knows that it's abnormal. She's first talking to the emergency navigation hologram. She first thinks she's talking to Rios, and then she realizes that she's talking to a holo.
It's a little too well groomed.
Yeah. But he says something that's kind of wonky, and she's like, oh, God, which one are you? So she says, and they're all kind of mildly linked to Rios. And we finally find out what the deal is with all the holograms looking like him. And it's actually a very clever answer. But first, before that, she's like, who is this person that he thinks Soji is? Why did he act that way? And he said, oh, because her name is Jana. And she's like, her name's not Jana. Where do you get that from? And he's like, I don't know. So Raffi then asks about, she had noticed the drawings that the Romulan XBs had been drawing, which was like 8 dots and then like and they're circular, little circles and stuff with orbits. And he's like, well, it looks like an octenary, which is an 8-sun system that is not known to exist in reality, but it does exist in Romulan mythology. It's thought to be apocryphal, which is like, not existent, but exists in stories. Back on the cube, Rizzo sees that the Fenris Rangers are here. Seven and Elnor go into like a navigation room on the cube, or some sort of control room, where Seven says, okay, let's take this cube over now. And so she starts like doing all the cool hologram computer stuff. And then you see like, a bunch of power sort of zooms up the cube shaft thing that they're in.
It's totally like Iron Man stuff when he's putting stuff on and doing this and that. And we'll get there eventually, but
yeah, it's
still science fiction for now.
It's around the corner. So then Rizzo confirms with like her lieutenant guy about how to kill the Borg. She's like, all these Borg are still inactive. And he's like, we could just jettison them into space. So because they understand the cube is repairing itself, and you see great exterior shot of all these sort of like little bug drone things, like
they're essentially nanites, but
yeah, exactly, like fixing the ship. So Rizzo, okay. So then we get a quiet moment with.
There's a lot of back and forth, so we apologize. There's a lot of scenes going back to the cube Yeah,
they do that a lot here. So Soji and Picard are having a quiet moment on the ship, and they're just eating some food. And he's like, "Do you like that?" And she's like, "I have no idea. I don't know." Yeah. And she's like, and that's sort of her basis for explaining to him, my wants, my needs, my tastes, like they're all foreign to me. I don't know. You asked me if I like this, and I don't know, because everything is manufactured, and it's really hitting home with her now that everything is just programming, and her memories aren't real. And he says something like, well, they may not be real, but they can. You still have a story, and it could still be possessed or something, or taken, something like that. And she says, you're talking about Commander Data. And he's like, among other things, yeah. And so they get into the conversation about Data, where she asks him, what was Data like? And he uses like the words brave, gentle. He had a child's wisdom. He was funny unless he was trying to make us laugh.
Which is very true.
Which is, it was a great, the central focus of this theme was because, and they also point out they make a point in the previously on, they make a point of showing the scene where Riker's kid, Estra, says to Soji that she can have Picard and Picard can have her. And this scene right here was really about establishing one thing, and that was the fatherly relationship between Picard and Data, which then indirectly makes Picard essentially Soji's grandfather and the familial relationship that they potentially could have. And so she asked Picard, did you love Data? And he contemplates it for a second, and he says, yes, in my own way. And then this part was great. She says, did he love you? And he says, well, Data, we all know this, Data's programming didn't extend to emotions. And she says, how do you think Data how would you want Data to have remembered you? And he says, you mean, if I died and he didn't, if he succeeded me? And she says, yeah. And his answer is literally the answer that any father would give about their child.
Like, this is the best shot, second best, one or two best shots in the whole episode. This episode was so, it was almost like reading an obituary, but yeah, it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it really is.
Good in bad ways.
Yeah. So he says, I would want him to think of me as somebody who believed in him, celebrated his successes, guided him, got out of his way when he was succeeding. And it's everything that a father would say about a child. And then she sort of looks up at him after a pause and says, in a very definitive manner, because she possesses some of Data within her, says, Data loved you. And that really causes Picard to sort of sit back and ponder it. So it was a really, really cool moment there. I mean, the chemistry between her and Picard in a very short period of time is really, really interesting.
Yes, totally agree.
So Raffi is still on her hunt to figure out what's going on with Rios. She's talking with the engineer Rios.
It's so funny. It's like Raffi's going to each of these EMHs, and she's collecting the boy band.
Exactly. Yeah. And this Rios has like a rougher. I'm pretty sure it's a Scottish brogue.
Scottish is what I think it's supposed to be.
What's that?
I think it's supposed to be Scottish.
Yeah, I think so too. I sometimes get my Irish and my Scottish a little bit mixed up.
You lived over there, man. You should know more than me.
I lived in England. If I heard them both, I'll put it this way: it's one of those things. If I hear them both side by side, I can tell you which one's which. But in isolation, one of them alone, I'm like, oh, which one is that? Because I never quite get the specific cues that tell me which one is which. But I'm pretty sure it's a Scottish. So anyway, she asked him about the 8 Sun system, and sort of together they piece together. Especially she says, why would somebody would have to drag 8 suns, 8 stars, set them in motion, and then get a planet? Why would somebody do that? And he was like, to show off, to say, hey, this is what I can do. She's like, or as a warning. And so Raffi then, in her own suite, talks to the emergency hospitality hologram when she tries to order some booze. He's like, nope, you locked yourself out of that, and you can't even override it. And
it's like, even for a medical emergency, you can't override it.
Right, exactly.
Pretty good.
So he explains that Rios, she says, what is the deal with all you guys looking like him? And he says, well, when he got this ship, it came with the holo program, and he chose the self-scan option. He claims that it was a mistake, but we're not so sure about it. He erased a lot of random stuff. He explains it, for example, there's like the temperature of some drink that he doesn't know because Rios erased it, which is a great little weird character thing. But you can also read the context there in terms of he claims that it was a mistake that he scanned himself, but that it was just at that point he was out of Starfleet. he probably didn't want to deal with anybody else and was just like,
Yep.
I'm just going to self-scan, maybe not understanding that it was going to create all these disparate personalities as opposed to very robotic versions of himself. And maybe that's why he went in and started tinkering with them to make them less personality-wise, less personality-based.
Because if you are trying to isolate yourself, because they go into the reason why and what he, the post-traumatic stuff he was dealing with, when he's like, I don't want to deal with anybody. I'd rather just deal with myself and think of it like a mirror, but that can answer everything. That's what you would do. And then I think when he was tinkering, I think that's also when he gave each of them like their own distinct personalities. I think would be kind of interesting. We didn't get into any of the specific details, but you can kind of see, it's really, really well done. And we talked about, it was going to come into play some way, somehow. We still don't know exactly why, but we see the trauma behind why he made that decision.
Yeah. So anyways, he says Rios is in need of a confidant one right now, and probably one that doesn't look like me.
Why was he leaning in towards her?
I don't know. I think it was an odd. It was just a weird directorial
She needs a
choice.
confidant, and she starts sitting back and then sits down on the bed. He got invaded her. It was weird.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting. I think it was meant to be for comedy's sake, because the entire sort of Sherlock Holmes experience there was meant for like comedy's sake, and while they're delivering this info. We do see Rios at that point. He's in his quarters looking at mementos from his days in Starfleet, and he opens up a box, and underneath, his communicator badge, his rank pips, there's a picture of him and his old captain, Captain Vandermeer.
He looks better with the beard, by the way.
Yeah, he looks a lot better. Yeah, he looks, he does. I agree with that. And there's also a drawing of what appears to be Soji and him sitting next to each other. So we get to figure out what that's about in a little bit, but back on the Borg cube, Seven and Elnor talking about waking up the sleeping Borg. Seven very reluctantly essentially decides to become the new Borg Queen for a second. And Command, she's like, we can make a little sort of still, not communicating with the larger collective, but our own mini collective here. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I might not want to come back if I go down this route. But she kind of understands she has to, because what happens in a second here. But Raffi at this point goes into the chateau with the 5 hollows, where she tries to piece together what happened with Rios on the Ibn Majid, his old Starfleet ship.
Now, this is the one crack. So every single time he has an interaction between his EMHs and him, it's pretty like shut off. It's fine. When they're all together, though, the accents falter a bit in this. Mm-hmm. You can tell it's... Other than that, like I said, his character's really good actor, especially playing that many characters in the same scene. This was the only scene where his accent faltered, but it's meant for comedic relief. We have the one that doesn't speak English, the Spaniard. You have the Irish guy, you have the doctor, you have the EMH, and they're banter back and forth because they all realize... They're self-aware of each other, which is nice. But then we find out each one has a little bit of different information. Yeah,
they all have different pieces of the puzzle, and they're all trying to put them down on the board, fitting
for
where
his
they
backstory. And it's not even the whole backstory, too. There are things that that Rizzo had to go to him about, because all the EMHs only know parts of the story, which I'm sure are things that he took out specifically.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and there you go, too. That's another reason why he was tinkering with them. Because like when it scans you, probably grabs some of your personality or whatever. So the bottom line is, though, something traumatic happened on his old ship, the Ibn Majid, and it had to do with Vandermeer and this girl that they're calling Jana, and it led to him having a breakdown, and then he left Starfleet. So we'll find out what happened in just a second. But first, Picard wakes up Jurati, and he's sort of in bad cop mode. He's in interrogation mode. Because like it's she killed Maddox, so he says as soon as we get to Deep Space 12, guess what you're doing? You're gonna go there and you're gonna turn yourself in for murder.
He wasn't being nice. He was telling her this is a command. He's like, this is what you are doing. Yeah. First thing you wake up, this is what's going on.
So
this is what will happen.
He softens up a little bit when she starts to tell him what the fuck is going on here, because she tells him all about and the stuff that O did. And she said, she violated me. She put her hands on my head, and she showed me everything, and she put a mental block or a psychic block in my head where I can't talk about this stuff. And she says, I these days I comfort myself with thoughts of suicide. She mentions the mental vision that was from thousands of centuries ago, or hundreds of centuries ago, thousands of centuries ago, whatever. And she says, we're at a threshold if we allow synths to come in. And then Soji says, if we go past this threshold of, technology creating life, the destroyer will come, and that's me.
The destroyers, Seb Cheneb, or something like that. There's a name.
Okay, yeah, I did not catch what she said. I didn't have my closed captioning on.
I did. I tried to spell it out. I tried to catch it, and yeah.
Okay, cool.
Seb Cheneb, the destroyer, and she goes, "It's me."
All right. So after that, Raffi goes in and she visits Rios, and he tells her story. So what happened was, about 10 years ago, back on the Ibn Majid, they came across a ship with 2 people on it. It was a first contact situation. And it was a guy who called himself, the Beautiful Flower?
Something like that.
And he was like the emissary guy. And then there was Jana, who just looked exactly like Soji. Once they came aboard, they received sort of a Black Ops order from Starfleet to kill them both, or else Starfleet would destroy their ship.
So what we come to find out is that whenever there's a first contact protocol, they have their initial setup of saying, "Hey, welcome," trying to be all Pete and nano, the whole everything, and then so they were there for some time, a couple hours. And then once he sent off his report to Starfleet, it immediately came back blacklisted. Like, code black, you must do this. This is a direct order from Starfleet security. This is priority 1. You have to do it. And so his captain pulls out a gun, shoots the emissary, shoots the... Well, we're assuming they're both synths, but basically shoots both synths. And then he basically... And then Rizzo... And then they... I'm thinking of.
So yeah, Rios then rips into Vandermeer.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I can't believe you did that." And he said, I guess it got so heated that Vandermeer was like, "Oh yeah, okay." So that must have been a heated confrontation.
Well, there. Could you imagine? Well, I think it was almost implied though that he went to stop him after he pulled out the blaster and boom, boom. He's like, "What are you doing?" Goes to stop him, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I have this order that I have to do," and then he offs himself. And then Rios is like, "What?" And then he reads a directive and says, "Hey, if you don't delete everything, if you don't give everything, this will be dead." So we have to assume that Rios is the only one that knew about that directive, except for O and a few other people. Because he said they dumped bodies, they incinerated things, wiped core banks, because he didn't want anybody else on the ship to be destroyed. And since was Rizzo, was he the number 2 on the ship?
Yeah, I think so, because I think I saw 3 pips on his thing. I think he was a commander.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, he was just like... So he cleaned up everything, and then he's basically suffering from... he is suffering from post-traumatic, because now, since it's blacklisted and all the memory, everything has been wiped. It's been deleted from history, and then people are just going to think he's crazy. So this is going to take me to another point.
Okay.
So the one thing I don't like is you have this big, expansive universe, but yet Rios just happens to have met synths before. That's the one downside where everybody kind of... I understand interweaving backstories, but you have this huge, wide, vast universe of Trek, and then they just happened... It's just like stories where everyone happens to be related and things like that. Not my cup of tea. It makes it interesting, makes his story kind of fit in. It's just a little far-fetched, but...
Yeah, I know. That's storytelling, man. What, are you going to have some boring-ass captain who's never done nothing and not related to anything? That's dumb.
Well, isn't that what Elnor is?
No, Elnor has backstory with Picard.
With Picard, but other than that, he's just some kid that Picard went to go pick up.
It's the name of the show is Picard. No, I think it makes some measure of sense. Raffi was former Starfleet. She knew a guy who was a pilot, And so, like, it's just like the Air Force. Like, you get out of the Air Force, you're going to know former people who are in the Air Force who might be now freelancing doing Air Force stuff. And
but he
it
happens
makes sense
to find
that Picard,
a synth that they're going out into space with.
well, the reason why he's a pilot is because he burned out of Starfleet, and the reason he's burned out of Starfleet is because he was on the Ibn Majid they had the synth. It's fine, Tim. We're moving on. This whole scene was countered with a scene between Soji and Dr. Jurati. And Dr. Jurati is having one happy moment in this whole godforsaken show where she's like, "Oh, you're just a piece of art. You're marvelous. You're fantastic. Look at you. You even have like a little some freckles or whatever. Some
Yeah,
moles
she's
or
in
something."
awe. She's just like, this is the culmination. This is what I've been. You are what I'm working for. You are the finish line for what I want. And she's in awe of how perfect and yet imperfect she is, because we see Data was supposed to be the perfect ideal thing, but she's in awe that, oh, you have freckles. And Soji even mentioned, well, my toes are crooked. And she's like, that has to be made with love and care, and it's so well done. She's just awestruck. And Soji's like, well, your directive was to kill me. Are you going to? And she goes, now that I met you, no, I can't.
Well, Soji even says, I'm not going to give you the chance to do it. And Jurati's like, I'm not going to try. And so everybody's like, okay, good. But yeah, Soji's also like, do you consider me a human? She's very adamant about that. She's like, do you consider me a human? And Dr. Jurati really doesn't have an answer for her because the answer is no.
Yeah.
After that, we see Rizzo going on her ex-Borg killing spree. These poor ex-Borg who are just standing around like dullards because they've had all their personality, and now anything they have to defend themselves and any like direction is just stripped from them. So they're like, what? You're doing what? And then so she's just like murdering all these people. And then Seven and Elnor in their little Borg command room, they notice all these lives being blinked out, and Elnor's like, oh look, it looks like they're being killed. And then Seven's like, shit, I gotta be a queen now. And so like it hooks into her spine.
This was the best money shot. This thing had this like pole come down, and then these tentacles come out, and 3 of them zip into her spine, and her eyes go black, and then they turn green. And she goes, "We are Borg," and I'm like,
yeah, it was really cool. They did that really well because they did a really great close up on her face. It was really fantastic. Jerry Ryan was just amazing.
Oh God, yeah. And they mentioned that she's like, well, we would become one collective, and she goes, well, I don't want to take over these people's minds. I don't want to have that again. He goes, we'll free them afterwards, but we need to save them first. Elnor does. And so she's like, fine, I'll do it, and it is amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. And then but unfortunately, it's kind of not effective. I mean, look, here's the thing: you get all these Borg. They're going to overrun everybody, and that wouldn't be much of a story. And so Rizzo basically has her lieutenant guy press one button. She gets a shield, and they're there watching all the Borg activate. And then, like, the Borg, the cube separates a little bit, and so they all get jettisoned out into space like they said they were going to do.
Into space. Actually,
that was rough.
Pushed out, but yeah. And you just see these little bodies, and it's not zoomed in on any of them, so you don't see them, like, crystallized or something. But you see these little, and they're gone. And she goes, no!
Yeah.
Like, you could still tell it's kind of... Because a Borg Queen wouldn't think twice about, Borg being sucked down into space, not a big deal. So the fact that Seven still has some of her personality and pains for the death of those potential lives lost, that was good.
Yeah, that was good. So after that, Jurati and Soji join the rest of the crew at the table. And she's very sheepish. She's like, well, I'm done killing people. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I've ever had... The Allison Pill's really good. She's really, really good. And she's like, this is the first time I've ever had, like, my own crew. And they all kind of like, okay, cool, you're one of us. What I suspect is going to happen is Commodore O, by the end of this, is going to be hauled off. And she's going to be held responsible for the murder of Maddox because she essentially coerced Jurati into doing it. Jurati's going to be set free and continue on the adventures of this motley crew. That's my guess on that one.
Yeah, because it was like she's like, hey, they put him into block and they forced me to do this, and like those memories were forced upon her. It's not like when at the beginning of the episode where those Romulans, they chose to grab on and gain that knowledge. She did not. She had this just tossed on her. It's pretty.
Yeah.
Good.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's revealed that O did more than just show her that stuff. She probably entered a command into her to do it, so it's probably not her fault. She's too good. In the meantime, Rios gets up, and he grabs some fries and some peppermint ice cream, and Raffi sort of starts laying out her conspiracy theory and talks about how hundreds of thousands of years ago, an unknown race leaves a warning on this planet saying once you cross the line, a threshold in synthetic life, much like Rios explains it, it's kind of like Zephyrin Cochrane's warp line. Like once you go into warp, somebody will come and say hello to you. And that's the same thing here. Once you cross a certain threshold for synthetic life, some destroyer species is going to come and show up and completely massacre everything. So whether that is like the Borg or a forerunner of the Borg or something we don't know, I'm sure we'll probably find out at some point. There's got to be some deeper answers here.
Borg, I think it's something that where you have something way out in space or something from a different universe. Once it realizes it senses true synthetic life, then it'll make its presence known.
It's going to be like cheesy species 8479 or whatever that one. What was that? 5432.
Yeah.
Species 84 some. Anyways,
MacGuffin,
that was
MacGuffin.
It was like the worst CG looking bugs.
Yeah.
I always thought that was the coolest idea though. Like I like those episodes of Voyager because it's like, oh man, that stinger for that episode, like where that species was introduced. Like it's a Borg, they're like resistance is futile, and then like a ship comes in and blows it up. It's like, whoa, somebody's killing the Borg.
Yeah, somebody's more powerful than what we perceive to be the most powerful.
Yeah.
But then you get to the whole Dragon Ball Z thing where like, oh, there's a new level we can achieve to become more powerful. And you're just like, oh.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of hokey. So anyways, they lay that out and they're like, once Soong created synth life, 40 years ago, the Romulans like, whoa, let's get O in there. She's half Vulcan and half Romulan. She rises through the ranks in Starfleet. She engineers the attack on Mars. They bring up Rios' adventures with the people from Bruce Maddox's world because that's where they're saying they were from. And then Soji's like, yeah, and because of me, I just ratted them out.
Okay. So I was going to bring this up, but you kind of moved on. The snack she has, fries and peppermint ice cream. Yay or nay?
No.
Okay, that might be the poll. So I did a poll on the... By the way, we have an official Twitter now. Down below.
There's 2 episodes left of Picard. We're
going to have more polls. We also had somebody say, hey, for 4 Lights, we should do reviews of Firefly. All kinds of crazy stuff. Oh, yeah! Dude, you've never seen it. That's what... Okay, I'm going to talk you into this. Anyway, so on one of our chats, I don't remember if this was in Mod Chat for Going in Raw or whether this was in Trek Chat, but they talked about fries and Frosties or fries and ice cream. Yay
so I'm yay for fries and milkshakes, but not peppermint.
Okay. I'm just saying fries and milkshakes. I'm going to put that, hopefully, if I remember, as soon as we get done, I'm going to make a poll. Fries and shakes. And last week I did a poll was last week's episode yay, nay. I only had like 1 or 2 people say nay. I don't know what's wrong with you. I think they were just trolling, but yeah, everybody else overwhelmingly said yay. So
I will put hopefully on the display, if I remember, I'll put the Twitter link right there.
Well, because we have my Twitter, your Twitter, and then ours maybe in the middle.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll figure that out somehow. I'll do it, or next week. I don't know.
The magic of editing.
I'll do it by the 10th episode. How about that?
Real 4 Lights at Real 4 Lights. Okay.
Yeah. But man, we got to get more people watching this stuff to if we want.
I'm telling you. So some people said, "Oh, hey, your videos need more likes." No, tell your friends. That's really the big thing. Share, and hopefully we'll get people caught up because.
Yeah, but the thing is, the problem, Tim, is they're Star Trek fans. They don't have friends.
Boo! You don't have friends.
They're also all virgins.
Oh my god! No, actually, I think they have some really kinky, weird, like.
They're doing that Star Trek cruise right now. I think they all have coronavirus.
No, they all have herpes.
They all have the clap.
But because think about it. Okay, before it was like Trekkie and weird science fiction tentacle stuff, and now we have furries, and so each generation has their own weird thing. So
nerds have a lot of sex, man.
Or weird stuff that they're into, but I mean, yeah, it's not. They're not virgins, man. I mean, whether by choice or not, but.
Smelly
Anyway.
Star Trek sex. Disgusting. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't
Soji
like
takes...
that. I don't. No, your fan fiction, man. I don't. Whoever's doing those drawings on Twitter that you're talking about, I have no idea. It was weird.
So anyway, Soji gets up, and she is pissed off. She, like, hits the table, and it, like, cracks. So she then basically just takes over the ship. She's like, I'm doing this. I'm going to go warn my people. That's my family. And Rios is like, what are you doing? She's like, do you even have a family? And he's like, no, I don't. And but then he starts singing a lullaby, which which enables him to take back the ship, basically. He's, like, able to move the shield away.
I didn't understand that. Was that the code to unlock the shields? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like his ultimate override thing. And so he does that. And he's like, yeah, because she's saying that she's going to go. I love when they bring this stuff up. She's going to take the ship into a Borg transwarp node. And then, so yeah, Rios takes the ship back. And the Picard's like, we tried it my way. We tried it Starfleet's way. Let's try it her way once. And then he, like, sits down. He's like, I'm going to command this ship. And he's like, I don't know how to turn on the VCR.
Yeah.
How do I program this thing?
He sits down in the chair. And he's like, let me get to work.
Yeah.
What am I doing? It's like, I looks over, he's like, and then Rios is just like,
right. And he's like, man, you want to just hop into a Borg transwarp node, and you want to do this without an anti-gravitron thing and stuff, and all that. He's like, it's my ship. And she's like, Rios, please take me home. And then Picard's like, and so he's like, okay, I'll do it. Why not? And so yeah, he obliges. They warp away. And then we see Rizzo. This is kind of cool. She's talking to her lieutenant guy, and he's sort of behind her because he's her lieutenant. And he gets immediately murdered by a couple of ex-Borg, and then she gets just swarmed by them, and they, like, have her on the ground. It's a very zombie Walking Dead-esque scene. But before they're able to do much damage, we see her beam away. So she transported away. So then Seven has the cube. So she's going to do something with that cube. And Elnor, very sheepishly, like, she is still in queen mode, and she's like, okay, the cube is ours. And then he's like, ooh, are you going to assimilate me now? And she's like, oh, and then she says Annika still has work to do. Because, like, she wants to. She's like, yeah, I want to, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, so like the funny thing is they call her by her human name, saying Annika, meaning the individual has work to do. And I love that line. I didn't catch it the first time. I'm like, what has work to do? Like, oh, yeah, it's her name. I had to think about that again. But yeah, it was cool. Too.
So it disengages from her, and she turns into normal Annika again. And then we get Picard on the bridge of the... I think this is the first time I actually heard the name of the ship, and I remembered it. And now I think it's like the La Sirena, I think, something like that. Anyways, he's on that ship. What's that yet? No, Tim. No.
The Macarena.
Cross the line. Picard is reminiscing about his early days on the Reliant. Did we know that he was an ensign on the Reliant? Did we know that? Pretty sure it's on the Reliant somewhere.
Yeah, I knew he was an ensign, obviously, and we knew he was on the Reliant. I don't think we knew that his level and his ranking and his time matched with that. I think we knew both things. I didn't know. Time.
Let's see if it's on Memory Alpha. In terms of having been said in a different episode. Childhood. There's got to be Starfleet career. Here we go. His academy stuff. We've all heard about that. That's great. There's a picture of Tom Hardy as Picard in the academy.
Oh, really? They don't have the other one from the episode with the bar fight?
What's that? Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Because, like, he's bald there, but then he had hair here.
Oh, yeah. What's up with that?
Okay. So, yeah. No, totally. Okay. Picard was posted to the Reliant, which he served with Lieutenant Nakamura. That was in Next Generation Broke the Measure of a Man. And then the next time it's referenced is in this episode of Picard.
Okay.
Cool.
And you got to admit, man, somebody who's writing for this is probably sending it off to Memory Alpha going, hey, make sure this report's accurate.
Man, Memory Alpha's a nerd virgin fan site. That ain't...
I thought that's what Discord was.
No, I'm sure they totally have fact checkers. I'm totally sure they have fact checkers. So anyways, Yeah, it's not like me writing this where it's like just making shit up.
Did you know that in Star Wars Episode 3, the gal who plays a librarian is actually a Star Wars historian?
Yeah, Star Wars Episode 3? What, the Revenge of the Sith?
Revenge of the Sith, there's a scene where Obi-Wan goes to a library, and then there's an older gal there who he talks to, and she is actually like a Star Wars historian.
Oh.
Like, so that'd be really cool to have something like, hey, I need this information checked out, and it's like the nerdiest looking at. Let me see here in episode 23 of.
I'd have to get if they brought me on, I'd have to do this pointy sideburns thing.
Why would you do pointy sideburns?
Because everybody in Trek has pointy sideburns.
Or just go bald.
You didn't know that?
Just go bald.
Why would I go bald?
Just bald because you're losing your hair.
No, I'm not gonna. No, I have a square, weird head. I'm gonna hold on to my. If I go bald, I'm gonna get hair transplant. Believe that.
Wow. Okay.
I'll disappear for like 6 weeks, and I'll come back with like amazing hair.
Just a giant fro. Have you seen the SNL skit where they do the Bosley hair transplant, but they use pubes?
Oh yeah,
hair
I've seen
is
that.
Super frizzy.
That's so gross. That's so nasty.
You think of the future though. That why are people bald in the future?
Stylistically, they want to.
No, Picard had the hair crown. That's not stylistic. That's genetic.
Yeah. Well, no, you're asking why. I'm saying this is why, because it's their choice to do it naturally.
No.
It's like the future is just like now. It's like things go through phases.
I don't know, man. I'm just.
It's
saying.
like sometimes there's one phase of people when they're like, yeah, we're just gonna do our hair naturally. And then other people, yeah, I know. You think by then you could manipulate like the DNA of people and everybody have amazing hair.
Anyway,
but they probably did, like in like 100 years, and then 200 years, they're like, oh no, we want to go back to natural things. People backlash out all the time. Anyways, we're at the end of the episode here. Picard reminisces with Rios about his early days in the Reliant, and he talks about knowing about Captain Vandermeer, and he says, I didn't really know him well, but I had always heard that he was a good man, that he was like one of the best Starfleet had to offer. And Rios was like, yeah, he was. And to him, Vandermeer was very much his father. So, I mean, that's sort of how this series is sort of going, is Picard is he's already a father figure to Raffi. He's going to end up being a grandfather figure to Soji. He's becoming a father figure to Rios.
Yeah, because Rios said, I almost called my captain. In my mind, I called him Pa or something like that. And he goes, I almost called him that once. The old man. I almost called him my old man once or twice. And I halted myself. So, yeah, you're right. Picard, if not a fatherly figure, a grandfatherly figure.
Mm-hmm, yeah, for sure. And then Picard sort of has this rah-rah moment where Rios says, I really hope that he didn't, he said, I'm sad that he killed himself, thinking that Starfleet had betrayed him. And Picard said, Starfleet did betray him. Absolutely he did. He said, the Zadvash might have laid a trap, but we could have sidestepped it. Instead, we gave in to fear and hopelessness, and that's all they have. And we have our own weapons called hope and good shit and awesome us. And
CBS All Access.
And CBS All Access. Exactly. That's the weapon we have to use. Doon. And so then he's like, it's the past is already written, but the future, we're gonna write that shit. And Soji's like, hey, we're here. So she shows up, and then they're there, and then we see the planet, and they leave the node, and Dirty Narek.
No, they go into the node.
Oh, they go into the node.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
They pull up. They're like, "Hey," because it was a 9-hour flight. They're like, "Hey, we're at the node." And he's like, "Are you ready for this? Buckle in." And they're all like, "Okay." And they go in, and all of a sudden, you see this sneaky little ship that sneaks right in by after him.
You think Narek makes it out of this season? No, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Narek?
Yeah.
Narek is gonna die in like episode 10.
Him and Soji,
Probably
man.
the next one.
Him and Soji.
They already did that. No, she's gonna be the one who ends up killing him too.
She's like, "Oh, you can survive,
Hey,
but you're not reproducing anymore."
Let me ask you this: is Dodge still alive?
Yep. Okay. So I'm probably not. Well, there could be another Dodge, but I doubt it. Like now,
the Dodge we know is dead.
The Dodge we know and saw. Well, I was thinking that they were gonna see. I thought it was gonna be a plot point that the Dajvash or the Vash were gonna get a hold of part of her and use it for something. Obviously, they have no clue what they're doing. They have no structure, no other organization to do research for them. They're out just they're out in the fields with a flamethrower, just burning everything. They don't care. So that now that we kind of know that, she's not alive.
Yeah. Hugh, I think, is dead too, but I was sad about that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
We haven't seen his body, though.
Yeah,
so maybe not.
He could. Or
maybe he was assimilated and then he got like sent out into space.
Oh, God. I'm alive. I'm dead.
Yeah. Anyway.
I survived. Well, unless Seven resurrects him somehow. I mean, Seven could have.
You know what's interesting? The next week on Picard, it's exclusively like shots from literally what seems to be the first like 5 minutes of the episode. There is some shit that's going to go down next week that they do not want us to know about till the episode. I think it's going to be jam-packed with cool shit. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of like Starfleet ship showing up at the very end. I don't know. Riker's going to show up with a jetpack. I don't know what's going to happen. Geordi's probably going to show up. I don't know. Some shit's going to happen. I'm telling you.
Whatever. What I'm going to say while this lunatic raves, tell your friends if you have your dad, your uncle, your cousin, anybody who likes Trek, who wants to hear a conversation about it, just pass on the information. Send the link. Slide into DMs. However you do to get your information, do it. Because we want to...
How about this? Instead of that, the 300 people still watching the show, buy the shirt off our Teespring store. If everybody buys this shirt, we'll come back for episode 9.
I'll do it by myself, and I'll just send it to you, and you can edit it. But
all right, fair enough.
Oh, well, remember, because we can use Zoom, and then I can have like W.S. Fletcher or Wayne Maker, even though we couldn't understand him, or
Wayne is not going to be on this. The day I die, he'll be on the show. How about that?
Well, and here's the thing, too. You have two ways of hawking your other crap. Wait, it's probably
Fletcher, yes. W.S. Fletcher, 100%. Wayne, over my dead body.
Like I said, you keep on hawking your crap, which is that way probably for me.
So, I was going to do, because I have 2 of these, I was going to put that on there, but that'd be overkill.
Because I wore this one. It is overkill, though.
Yeah, I know. This just looks like a cool shirt, so I put it on there.
Anyway, brought to you by Dragon's Milk. Not quite yet, but eventually.
Yeah. Anyways, follow us on Twitter, all that crap, buy a shirt, whatever. Tell your friends or not. We're still going to do the episodes. I don't care if 2 people are watching. That's it for the show. Thanks for watching, Tim. Thanks for being with me.
Anytime. You know what? Although this week was a little different. You're like, hey, we're doing this now. And I'm like, put clothes on. Hurry, put a shirt on, Tim.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was actually, like, motivated today.
Well, it's amazing. Next week I'll go shirtless.
No. Well, goodbye, everybody.